Just a little note here. You're going to hear some crazy background noises. I do apologize. It's a crazy time that we live in. And, I am so excited about the content here. And, I hope people will find it incredibly helpful. Thanks for understanding.
Week 21 of Aon's Public Affairs podcast was recorded August 26th, 2020.
Hello and welcome to the Aon's Public Affairs podcast. Daniel Serota out of Chicago, Illinois. Well, I am excited today to be joined by my good friend from Washington, D.C., Dane Linn, Vice President of Education, Workforce, and Immigration for the Business Roundtable. Dane, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks, Dan. Great to be here with you this afternoon. Appreciate the invitation.
Of course. And Dane, let's dig in here. We are in a very interesting time, a pandemic. We've all seen what has happened through these last couple of months. We're on episode 21. We've started from the beginning of this pandemic, 21 weeks of everything going on. I would be interested in your take on kind of what the workforce is going to look like in the short and the long term as we see this pandemic play out, the economy starts opening up again. What is your overall feel?
Yeah, it's hard to be optimistic, but I am going to be optimistic because I think through any challenge, there are a lot of opportunities. But it's hard to not first acknowledge the pain that a lot of people are going through. You have tens of millions of individuals on unemployment. Several, if not many, of those jobs are not going to return in this economy as we come out of the pandemic. And I think with that, though, we have a lot of opportunity to get individuals to think about what does that new, not just new job look like, but what's the new career look like? And we already know, and we've actually known for some time, that there are a lot of jobs where there's high demand. And if you think about whether it's data analysts or cybersecurity or other technology-related fields, there are individuals who may be out of a job today, but could find a quick path, not just back into a job, but actually into a job that gives them an opportunity for upward mobility. And so, yes, there are a lot of jobs in hospitality. They're closing. The hotels are closing. They may eventually come on board, but those individuals have to figure out what to do. And the bright spot, from what I see, is that not all those jobs are going to require a 4-year degree. That companies are saying, wow, how can I get people who, they might have a credential, but they may actually have skills and experience that are portable from what they used to do to what I need today? How do I think differently in the ways I look for talent? And so those are in advanced manufacturing, they're in the IT fields, there are a number of areas where we see high demand. And for the people who are located outside the urban centers, because some people will react to what I'm saying and say, yeah, but I'm not in Chicago. I'm not in Dallas, Fort Worth. I'm in rural Iowa. So the encouraging part of this is that the remote work we've been doing, we've seen a number of governors and a number of, from where I sit, a number of CEOs say, wow, we've actually learned that remote working is not all that bad. And it means that I don't just have to recruit talent from where my company is currently located, whether headquarters or other facilities. So how do I actually recruit talent? How do I recruit talent from another state and be able to allow that individual to stay where he or she lives, but work for Salesforce, who's located in San Francisco?
Yeah, and it brings an interesting point, right? So we are changing the way work is. This pandemic has made, myself, Lake Zurich, Illinois, in my bunker of my basement working from home when I would normally go to my office in Chicago. How do you think virtual work is changing the way HR and even the overall culture of firms across the board that you're even seeing from your Business Roundtable members?
I mean, that's a great question. I have to say from my experience, I think we are still navigating our way through this. After 6 months of working remotely in the mountains of West Virginia, 6 hours south from DC, we're still trying to figure out how often do we communicate? among the BRT team. How do we create efficiencies in the ways in which we interact virtually versus the way we used to interact when we were in the office and could pop down the hallway to our colleague's office to ask a quick question? And how do you balance the interaction with colleagues virtually and at the same time actually get the work done that you're trying to do? And as a membership organization, I think we're finding new ways to use the technology to actually maintain our relationships with individuals on the Hill, with our membership, to make sure that we're actually serving the membership. So I think this is an experiment that's underway. And the beauty of it is we've learned how to adjust. I mean, I think working remotely has required even people like me to figure out or to realize I need to be more adaptable. I may be static in the way I want to work, but the fact of the matter is I can't. I have to be able to adapt to the changing circumstances and the changing needs.
Dane, you hit a really good point. And one of the things that Aon has done is created these coalitions across the globe called Work, Travel, and Convene. What's really focused on trying to figure out how people do get back in the office, but also what the future of work looks like. Because I think what's important is tomorrow we may not be back, but businesses are still working during this pandemic. And the transformation and really being flexible and really understanding that during any of these times, you have to adjust to the circumstances you're faced. And one question, Dane, that I think is a hot topic that we're seeing all over the place is D&I, which it should be. During this pandemic, during this time, how are you seeing companies being involved in moving towards more diversity inclusion overall? And I think remote work has an interesting tie to it as well, because a lot of the D&I conversations are one of those things that are face-to-face. It actually is that interaction between individuals. And would be interested in your take on how, you're seeing companies react.
Yeah, even before the pandemic, BRT was doing a lot of work on diversity and inclusion. And that cuts clearly in the workforce area. But since the pandemic, I would say there's been even an increased focus on this issue. And I want to be pragmatic about this. There's been an increased focus in a couple of ways. One, what does our workforce look like today? What does it look like at the entry level, middle management, upper management, C-suite? And companies asking themselves the question, let's actually look at the numbers. And beyond the numbers, what are we going to do differently to ensure there's more diversity in our workforce? And that's not just at the entry level. That's not on solely recruiting, but what are we going to do for the individual who's worked at my company for 15 years, has had a number of jobs in the company, brings a variety of experiences? What do we do to help that individual take advantage of careers for a better job with better pay? How do we promote advancement for those individuals of color within the company? And how do we promote advancement and at the same time not say to the person, and by the way, you have to go back and get an associate's degree, or you have to go back and get another 4-year degree? How do we recognize those skills? And what does that mean for the function in human resources and the ways we determine who gets in the door and who advances? The second area, staying with the pragmatic theme, is what does the universe look like from which we recruit talent? Do we go to the same 5 places and we still have concerns that our workforce is not diverse? Let me give an example. I was down south a couple of months ago visiting a fairly large company. Data is their business. It is a rich universe of higher education institutions that are quite diverse. It's in the South. And you could look around that company and see 2 Black American males. And you begin to have a conversation, and the company folks look at you and say, we can't understand how we can't get the diverse talent we need of Black, male, American, young Black men. But yet, they're not going to the institutions. They're not going to the HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities. They're not going to other institutions outside of their area that have a significant proportion of individuals of color. So I think we have to not just say, yes, we're looking for diverse candidates. But the question is, where are you looking for them? Are you going to the same 5 places? And then I think lastly, and it's tied to the first point I made, what do your job descriptions look like? Do you think everyone has to have a 4-year degree and 15 years of experience, even to get into the company? Or are you really focused on the skills? And related to that, are you over-speccing jobs that don't really require a 4-year degree? And the last point I want to make, which I'm really encouraged by the number of companies who have talked with me, is their interest in figuring out how do we eliminate the biases in the algorithms we're using that weed out candidates. It may be a second lieutenant or even a sergeant in the Army who's now retired, but he doesn't bring a bachelor's degree in engineering. But you look at everything he or she did in the Army, they make the perfect candidate for the job you desperately need to find someone to look for. So I think those are a couple of areas, and I think this is an area where we're going to see much more activity, and not just activity, but actually a change in behavior, a change in practice, and a change in company policy. And that's what makes this so exciting to me.
Yeah, and I think, Dane, you hit the head on a couple of points. And what's really exciting to me is even now during a time of COVID, it's giving a lot of companies the opportunity to dig in further in their roles, really take a deeper dive, find those right job descriptions, and actually look and say, to your point, what needs a 4-year degree? Or where can we hire someone from an associate's degree to come in and do those jobs? And it also fix a workforce problems of retention. And as you know, we've seen that through our apprentice program and other things that do bring diverse candidates in, but that's not the only solution as part of it. It's the workforce solution of bringing people that we never would have had, retain them long term, and continue to grow. And, more and more now, in Chicago, we're seeing more companies dive in and really want to get engaged and look at alternative workforce solutions to help them grow and maintain. And you couldn't have said it better. Dane, my last question for you that I'd be curious in your take, you deal with workforce, you deal with education. This is kind of a combo of two. What advice would you give somebody that is at the early stages of their career to be getting a job now, getting into that door for that opportunity to be able to, jump right in and get into the workforce?
I'm going to start back in high school, to be honest with you. And I'm going to tell you a little story about my own daughter. One of the things I said to my daughter is, if you think it's going to be enough to take advanced placement classes, take all the hard classes, and never do anything in the real world, never have any experiences, and post high school graduation, to sit around and do nothing in the summertime and not have any real world experiences that demonstrate to an employer, look at the opportunities I've taken advantage of. And some of those opportunities are completely unrelated to what she would have done, but they build experience. How do you take advantage of all those different opportunities to communicate to a potential employer, I'm worth your consideration, that I may not bring all the experience, I may not bring all of the right qualifications, but my thirst, my desire to do well and be a contributor to your company and to society writ large is off the charts. And I've had a number of CEOs say to me, I have some individuals that come to me with some of the best credentials, but their desire is to work at a cube all day long. And their opportunities for mobility within my company are significantly inhibited by their desire to work all alone in a cube. I think you have to be able, even once you get in the door, to say, I don't want to be in the same job for the next 10 years, maybe not even the next 5 years. So you have to constantly, I think, show companies on the front end that you really have all these experiences and a desire to actually do something well. And then once you get in the door, you have to take advantage of every opportunity they give you.
Well, I couldn't have said it better. Great story, and I agree. And it's showing the more factor and how you could grow. And look, Dane, I am extremely thankful for your time coming onto the podcast. I hope I can get you back on in the future to really talk about the change that we're going to see. I am also optimistic that I think things will turn around at some point. things will open up and that we will be, moving towards that right direction. Everybody, thank you for joining the podcast. Please hit subscribe. We're on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, 5 stars. We love you guys. Thanks for continuing to listen, and we look forward to next time. Thanks so much.
This information is a resource for Aon clients and business partners. It is intended to provide general guidance of potential exposures and is not intended to provide legal, regulatory, or medical advice. Due to the dynamic nature of infectious diseases, Aon cannot be held liable for the guidance provided. We encourage listeners to seek additional information from credible sources. Thank you.